Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. So, how's it going? One day, 24 hours. If you were in deep samadhi constantly from morning to evening, it was very quick. But if you were falling asleep and your knees were hurting, then it was very slow. So time depends on pleasure and pain. But I do find this way of, you know, not emphasizing the object and emphasizing the space of awareness, to me seems very timeless. Because time is, for me, it's about getting things done, accomplishing things, the doing of our lives, which is necessary. But to me, this way of practice is more awakening to whatever. And also, it's a way of actually relaxing the mind. And I don't think we're very much taught how to relax the mind. We're taught how to fill up the mind, how to maybe create things and manufacture things and attain things. But the whole sense of just what does a relaxed mind feel like? To me, it feels like this. It's just this very simple awakened knowing of the way things are. And that's always available. And it's so simple, I think people don't believe it. Basically, they just think they don't trust it. There's got to be more to this. Um, Probably is, but yeah, like in this moment, we're just sitting here. You want me to say something? That's desire, right? So I just sit here and I don't do anything. He's had a heart attack. So there's like an anticipation of something. Now, for me, when I started to give talks, to just be silent was actually very difficult because I thought I had to fill in the space all the time. And now, of course, I like to play around with it. But just that, where I stop talking, what happens? What happens? Nothing happens. There just is. Just a suchness. And very direct. Very direct. If you want something to happen, then of course it's uncomfortable. Or if whatever happens doesn't fulfill your expectations of what say a teacher should do, then that's also uncomfortable. Or if teacher says something really fantastic, then that's fantastic. And those are all the experiences we have in these kinds of any kind of situation. But whether I say something clever, or whether I say something silly, you can be aware of what the reaction is to your mind, right? So when I say nothing, you respond in whatever way you respond. Whatever, it doesn't matter. But you know how you respond. You can know that. And then I just maybe inadvertently insult someone. I try not to do that. But inadvertently someone asks a question and I put them down. And then that affects you like, whoa, he's a bit of a rough number, isn't he? So you feel maybe hurt by that. But you can know that, sure, right? And then maybe I handle the question very, very well. And you think, wow, he's cool. He's got the stuff. And you can know that. So each of those experiences is different, but that which knows is not different. And that to me is the space of relaxing the mind. The other is just, a normal change in situations and human reactions. So how do you relax the mind? I have some. I don't want to go into too much new material, but just to review, one suggestion I'm making is kindness. Love and kindness is so very important. to how you feel and to your body, um, to your emotions, to your memories, a sense of open-hearted acceptance. And that, that's, if you think about it, it's very, very interesting where you can feel quite um, negative in some way. Let's say you can feel very judgmental about someone, right? And yet, if you practice awakening, you can know that sense of judgment and open your heart to it. Oh, judgment feels like this. And that, to me, what kindness is about, kindness as a way of accepting the variety of human experience. And I just don't see how you could really have authentic awareness without kindness. Seems to me, there seems to be really one thing. And kindness or loving kindness or metta is not, it's not a judgment or approval or disapproval. It's just allowing, allowing this situation to be what it is. And can we learn anything if we don't allow things to be the way they are first? If I already have a preconceived notion of what I want to attain or what I want to get rid of or who I should be, who I shouldn't be, does not that preconceived notion block me from knowing the way things are? You imagine like a child, if you have a preconceived notion of what a child should be, and you just discipline the child gets up really messed up. Whereas if you open your heart to the child and you figure out, oh, what's going on, you listen, and then you can offer some advice. So that kind of primary sense of loving kindness to this being, to the body, mind experience is so very, very important. So if Luangpor Sumedho just gave a, a talk at Amaravati, and it was something about understanding the inner tyrant. So inner tyrant is a phrase he's used for a long, long time. And inner tyrant is that voice in you, which is always critical. You should have done more, you should have done different. And that is a kind of tyranny of thought. That's all it is, it's just thought. But it's also thought which is coming from conditioning and habit. So each of us, although the Dharma is a kind of universal, each of us has a different program. We have a different program we have to learn from. And for instance, my mother was a very loving woman. My grandmother was a very loving woman. So I've had good women in my lives. Never been married. I have a lot of women friends. But my grandmother, she would, if I, as a kid, because we lived together in Germany during the refugee time, and then our family split up. But so the first 4 years of my life, I was in the refugee situation in Germany with my grandmother, mother, grandfather, father, brother, and so many other refugees. But if I broke, apparently I don't remember this, but if I broke a glass, my grandmother would say, "Oh, it's meant to be broken," rather than, "Oh, you should be more careful." Now that's beautiful conditioning, like Ajahn Chah, right? Someone else maybe had a mother which said, "Then whack, you broke it, you twit." And that's going to have effect the rest of your life, right? And each of us has those effects, good or bad. And so each of us has to be quite. Each of us is an individual in that sense, and the Dharma is not really couched in individuality; it's couched in generality. So attachment, non-attachment, hatred, love, these are kind of general formula. But you're not a general formula. You're a specific being with specific conditioning and specific challenges. So each of us has the challenge to interpret the Dhamma in our individuality. So when we say that our emotions are not self, what that's pointing to is that you can witness your emotions objectively. It's not saying that there is not individuality. There is individuality. Your experience is different than mine. So you want to be careful not to just dismiss individuality, that it's all not self. That's just pointing to the fact that you can be aware. So I can be aware of the conditioning of whatever. Um, and part of, I think, this way of practice where you open the mind and allow things to come up is that you do touch things in ways which are um, personal, a personal individual in that way, and that can be painful. Like we say sometimes in meditation, you touch the dark side of experience, maybe some hurt in marriage or some hurt in childhood, or maybe some recent grief or loss. And those are very important to allow to be conscious. If you don't let them be conscious, then you're never really liberated. They're always sort of in the background saying, hey, hey, it's my turn. No, be quiet. So if you feel sad or you feel hurt or someone says something to you and you get overly reactive to it, it's not your fault. It's your conditioning. If someone for some reason says something critical to me, no big deal, but I really react strongly, you say, well, you're overreacting. Well, actually, I'm not overreacting. It's just happening. I'm not doing it on purpose. It's just happening. So then that overreaction, so, oh, that's interesting. This person looked at me like that, said that, and I really got uptight. Let's have a look at that. Let's let that come up into consciousness in whatever way. Whereas if you have an idea that like a good meditation is where you none of that stuff comes up, that's a happy meditation. Yeah, sure. But maybe a good meditation is when things do get triggered and you now have the capacity to witness it in an open way. Because then you're finding refuge in something which is bigger than your most negative emotion. That's hard to do, but it's very valuable. So on this retreat, I hope that you only have happy states of mind, that you love each other all the time, that your samadhi is smooth, euphoric, your knees never hurt, and you enjoy the salad. But if it doesn't happen, no problem, because it's the way it is. It's like this. This is a very, very beautiful practice because it includes everything. It is not saying you should be anything. It's not saying you should be happy, you should like the retreat, but it's finding refuge in that which is beyond qualities, beyond experience, beyond gender. Like awareness is not Thai. Awareness is not monk. Awareness is not person. Awareness is not what? Awareness has no parameters, but awareness is, Chai. Nothing would happen without consciousness, without awareness. So we're awakening to that. That's why it's truly a refuge, and that's why it's our real home. I must say, the last 6 months, that idea of our real home has been very strong for me. When you come home, you survive the retreat or whatever. You come home from China and you've been really exhausted, huh? You come home. China was exhausting. We went for 12 days. This man, he had a real tough schedule for us. Thank you very much, William. Um, just think about that. You've been at the office or wherever you've been, and let's say you have a good home. You don't have a dysfunctional home. If you have a dysfunctional home, this analogy doesn't work. But you have a really lovely home, good art, and you have nice furniture, and you have a good family, and a fridge full of good food. Whatever. You come in that door and you feel relaxed. Oh, great, I'm home again. That's what meditation's about. It's coming home. Like just this easeful sense of awakening to the way things are, rather than whatever. Now, how do you get there? What's the difficulty with that? You might understand it as an analogy or an image. Well, the difficulty is the furniture. You've got all kinds of furniture in there, and your living room is pretty tight. There's not much room. And the fridge maybe has got some old rotten salami in it. Or, there's so much furniture in consciousness that we don't see the space. And the furniture is moving. So it's called emotions, it's called habits, it's called restlessness, it's called dullness. So what we're trying to move to is kind of unfurnished awareness. And when you just put down trying to do anything, you just listen to the sound of these lovely air conditioners. Consciousness is furnished by air conditioners. There's stuff in the space, but you're not lost in the furnishings. You're the witness, you know the space. So there's objects coming and going, emotions, feelings, dramas, memories, bad knees, bad stomach, good knees, good stomach. These are all objects. That's the furniture. And what we're trying to notice is the space, the emptiness, the openness. That's why retreats are good, because there's not that much furnishing. It's open, it's open. So think about that as you're meditating. If you've got a model of meditating of becoming and attaining, those are models that exist. Go for it if you want. Does it work? Does it really, really work? And does it fit with the Four Noble Truths, the abandonment of craving? To me, it doesn't, like if I'm trying to attain to something, I usually am lost in bhava tanha. If I'm opening to the way things are, and then I let that openness just unfold, then realizations are certainly happening and possible, but I'm not doing it. I'm available for realization. I'm available for insight. Make sense? Let's try some questions. Namaskar, Luangpor. Can you please explain more about background, foreground concept? For example, when annoyance happens, and I am annoyed, foreground knowing annoyed and annoys. Um, this person needs to learn a bit more English. I need to learn a bit more Thai. So what is annoyance? Annoyance is someone eats all the salad before you and you're a vegan and you get to the line and you look at the salad, it's all gone. And the person in front of you took a massive amount, right? You didn't even get one carrot. And your expectation, because you're vegan, is salad. That's what I want. That's what I should be getting. So with contact, you have visual contact, there's a feeling, and the feeling is what? Well, the feeling is disappointment. Disappointment because you want salad. So rather than knowing disappointment as disappointment, disappointment feels this way. If you're there, you're free. You just know this disappointment feels like this, and you stay with it, and then eat the salad tomorrow. But if you're not quick on the mark, so that's passa vedana, yeah? Vedana is the disappointment. Then you pick up the vedana, you pick up the disappointment, and you look at the person that's now eating the salad, and you look at them fiercely. May you break a tooth or whatever. And that's attachment. Tanha upadana, paticca samuppada, right? So with contact, there's a feeling, but the feeling is not, it's in a context. It's in the context of what I expect, what I want, what I don't want. If I don't want anything, if I'm not bothered about salad, I don't affect it by it. It's neutral. But so then, if you see disappointment as disappointment, and you know it as you know it, you have sati sampajanya, mindfulness and quick comprehension, or you have the foreground is disappointment, the background is the knowing, it's the awareness. And the foreground changes, the furniture changes, it's intense, and then it dissipates, whatever, it moves, it changes, but the knowing is unchanging. But let's say you now weren't mindful enough and you picked up the disappointment and you attached to it and you created a sense of me and her. Right? Bad move. Because every time you see her going in the line, you try to get in front of her. or or you see her sitting there and you think, cow. You ate all the salad, or your mind starts to create this person. Right? That's pretty serious heedlessness. It's all just perception. It's all just thought. So then you notice, oh, you're annoyed at this person, or you've judged this person. Judgment can happen really quick. Huh? Someone can just inadvertently do something, and all of a sudden you're critical of them. Critical mind is very, very quick. So that you have to, so then, oh, wow, look at that. Look what I've created around just that, all of that. And then you start to feel the karmic result of not being aware of disappointment. And then you see the person, you see the aversion or the annoyance arise. You say, oh, annoyance feels this way. And you're back on the path again. Or you get lost in the annoyance and then you have to do it again. And you can see how if I do this disappointment, blame, disappointment, blame, disappointment, blame, disappointment, blame, I do that from time I'm 14. When I'm 40 and I've not noticed it, what have I got? I've got a neurotic mind. And then I start to meditate. And then I start to unravel that. And many people are like that. They haven't seen that they're creating this kind of structures in the mind. So you have to be very, very careful. So I don't know, that background foreground is just a model I use. It's not, I just find it quite easy. Background, listening, open. Foreground is furniture. Foreground is five khandhas. Foreground is six ayatanas. Foreground is sense experience. Foreground is thought. Foreground is perception. Everything is foreground except background. And background is your real home, and background is nibbana. Now, obviously, the realization of nibbana, or what that is, has depths to it. And the way you touch those depths is by abiding as awareness, just waiting rather than trying to get something. Because if you're trying to get something, you're still into trying to achieve or get. So it takes a lot of patience just to sit with the way things are. You usually fall asleep. So then we do things. We do things to brighten the mind. We bring up metta. But basically, you want to just abide as awareness as long as you can, moment by moment by moment, and see what happens. Just see what happens. And that's where you start to get the depths of silence. The depths of silence, which are always there, but you're not available. We're not available to it because we're distracted. So if you're in terms of meditation, you do stuff to calm the mind, don't you? You do some anapanasati, you do some metta bhavana, you do some breathing exercises. And then you start to collect the mind. You start to collect the mind, and you start to. But at a point, you do. I think most of us tire of the doing. Always a sense of me doing something. I think most of us tire, and we have enough centeredness to just observe with choiceless awareness. We don't choose an object. And that's where you start to touch what the background means, what the silence is about. You start to intuit that. At least that's the way it works for me. Luangpor, trusting in awareness. What does the stage before trusting in awareness feel like? For me, it feels like I have just learned a new skill. And then in brackets, I have phobia for, like swimming, but I am nudged to step into the pool, and yet I am scared. I can't let go. I can't trust. Okay, so you begin with if I suggest to you trust and awareness, and then the very word trust brings up boom, then that's what you look at, correct? What else can you look at? You look at that. So maybe you try to analyze trust, but then it's intellectual. So for this person, trust brings up a sense of fearfulness, it seems, if I have that question right. Then that's what you look at. You look at that rather than thinking that trust has no, is anything. You just try to look at that, and that's trust and awareness. And then if your mind starts to think, is this trust and awareness? You look at that, a doubt. So awareness is always this like moving away from and yet knowing, moving out and yet knowing, spacious and yet knowing, non-attachment, non-grasping. And of course, difficulty is thought. And so what I'm suggesting is the the movement towards silence, move to less thought rather than more thought. So I think this person probably was fine. You'll figure it out. I'm deeply thankful for this retreat. I find difficulty differentiating pleasant and neutral feelings when doing body contemplation. They seem similar since they are both not painful. Would you give some guidance, please? Thank you. Doesn't matter. What does it matter? What does it matter if it's pleasant or minorly pleasant? That's you're just attached to the furniture. Like, is the picture really straight or is it not straight? Should the wallpaper be green or blue? It's just like, doesn't matter. It's just an object. Whether it's painful, kind of not painful, maybe kind of painful, it's just thought. But we're not really concerned about the quality of objects here. Where this kind of question comes is from the tendency to have very analytical descriptions of consciousness. And we have these very, very detailed descriptions and refinements and that. And then the problem is people read that and then they try to see it. They try to see that particular interpretation. But what for? What good does that do? Because you're still in objects. Your attention is still in the wrong place. So you get the analysis and then you get another analysis. And that I think is a danger of over intellectualizing the foreground. 5 khandhas, that's sufficient. Mind, body, experience, that's sufficient. But you can spend a lifetime analyzing the foreground. It's like a lifetime of interior design. But what about the room? What about the space? What about emptiness? What about consciousness? So one of the things people do is when they study a lot, then they try to replicate in their mind what they've studied. So they have these models, and then they try to fit their experience into those models, but then they're no longer aware. They're just thinking, analyzing, comparing. That's not really awareness. It's thought. It's thought. If there is the unconditioned, the uncreated, the unoriginated, the unformed, it cannot be an intellectual discernment. It can't be like a comparison. It has to be something that's behind that. So I guess I would ask this person, have you read a lot in Theravada Buddhism? Have you studied a lot in Theravada Buddhism? And then do you then take those intellectual models which you've studied, and then do you try to figure out which of these intellectual structures your mind is going into now? And if you do, what's the point of that? How could that be helpful to realize the unconditioned? Because your attention it seems to me it's in the wrong place. It's on the conditioned. How can I realize the unconditioned if I'm always in the conditioned realm? If my mind is always in thought, in analysis, then my mind is not available for silence. Logically, it's not available for silence. So I'd ask this person to think about, well, how do you see this project? Do you see this project as a kind of analysis of mind so you get some kind of intellectual conclusion? Or does the analysis of mind, is it sufficient for you just to let go of the mind? Like my early years, I studied law, and then I realized, well, basically all I have to know is that the khandhas change, and Nibbana is not in the khandhas, so that's enough. I don't need to know any more than that. That was a liberation. Because I did have the feeling that I had to keep studying and know more. And then, and then this, and then I just got more and more confused. I said, well, what's the point of it? What's the point of me having more and more information? What's the point of having a PhD in Buddhism? I don't get it, really. Is it about accumulating information, or is it about letting go of the need for knowledge? Knowledge is still constructed, but awareness is not constructed. It's not about knowledge. So in my own background, like I spent a lot of time studying, difficult Western philosophy, and then I not understand it, and then I think I'm stupid, kind of just creating my own kind of suffering, and then I read complex texts of this and that, and after a while I thought, this is just making me think more. This is just creating more doubt. And I was more interested in silence, peace, emptiness. These are more attractive. And then Luangpor said, stop reading for 5 years. And that was very radical. And I was so grateful. It was hard because I wanted to read it. So every time I'd have a doubt, then okay, I'll go to that book and I'll figure out this doubt. And Luangpor said, no, 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 no. All you're doing is filling the mind with an answer, which will then produce another doubt because you're still an intellect. Intellect is a sankhara. It's not asankata. It's constructed. He said, look at doubt as an object. Huh? Look at the construct of doubt, the arom in Thai, yeah, aramana in Pali, the mood of doubt. Now, the mood of doubt is pre-thinking. Thinking doubtful thoughts is subsequent to doubt, right? So if I have a mood of doubt, what's this about? Then I have doubtful thoughts, which is fine if you are trying to figure out your profit and loss statement in a business, or you're trying to figure out if Google Maps is taking you to the right place. That's the functional use of doubt. But in religious, spiritual aspiration, doubt is a hindrance. It is both a nivarana and a sanyojana, if you use the Pali. And I think I have the Pali out. Uh, but so doubt in samadhi practice is what? Should I do the body sweeping or should I do breath? Should I do metta bhavana? Don't just do something. So that's doubt in terms of meditation. Doubt in terms of sanyojana is the inability to see doubt as a mood of the mind. And that is what perpetuates intellectual activity. Now, there's a huge difference between knowing you don't know, like just this feeling of not knowing, and being aware of that as anicca, dukkha, anatta, as Dhamma. Now, and the desire then for the intellectual person, intellectuals like answers. So when the doubt comes up, they then seek an answer. Trouble is, in terms of a sanyoja, you never see that doubt itself is anicca, dukkha, anatta. So you never go beyond thinking. You never go beyond thinking. Your thinking can be clever and you can fool people, but you never go to the silence of the mind. The mind's always thinking. But when you know doubt is doubt, as an aram, as a mood, and you allow yourself to not know, that's uncomfortable for the intellectual. The intellectual wants an answer because that's where they feel comfortable with answers. Now, so there's a desire for the intellectual to have an answer, and that's where the Four Noble Truths come in. Huh? So doubt comes up. It's uncomfortable. You want to fix it. You look for an answer. So the real problem with doubt is tanha, not an answer, but the desire not to have, the desire to know. And if you allow yourself not to know, then tanha ceases and the mind becomes silent. Not because it got an answer, but because it was okay not having an answer. So that's really important, I think, for our cultures, because we're intellectuals. We're trained to think. We're trained to solve problems, and that's why you get a salary because you deal with things and you solve problems, but not in Dhamma. That's different. So sometimes, like in the text, when they talk about that, you say that the person has no longer has any doubt in the Buddhist teachings as an answer to that. Well, you could have someone who is just blindly believes in the Buddhist teaching and could be actually quite stuck. So you could have a fundamental Buddhist who believes everything and has no doubt, but actually they have no reflective mind. I think we've all seen people like that, right? They're actually very boring because they have no breadth and they just know this is what the Buddha said, and this is what he said, and this is what he said. Did you ever meet him? And this is what the texts say, and this is what the texts say. And you can see this person has no breadth. This person can't get outside of this blinkered view. And that's Ditupadana, isn't it? It's attachment to being a Buddhist in a doctrinal way. And then that kind of person tends to say, well, Hinduism is all wrong. Christianity, definitely. And Islam and Judaism and so on. And so the person takes a position. And that's kind of very sad. That's very, very sad. But here, we're not taking a position on being Buddhists, are we? I believe, like, you don't believe in anicca dukkha anatta, do you? Well, no, you practice anicca dukkha anatta. So even if the Buddha didn't live, it doesn't really matter. So if you say to me now, the Buddha never lived, it's all rubbish. Maybe. Chay, because my faith is not dependent on a historical personage. My faith is based on the liberation of suffering, and I know this works. This works for me. So you see, the way we're functioning, we're not believing in Buddhism. We're not believing in shunyata. We're not believing in anatta. We're using them as ways of liberating the heart, liberating the mind. It's different. Luangpor Chah would just say, "Oh, farang kit mat." Yeah, kit. How do I remember everything I've learned each time I attend a Dhamma teaching and not feel I have to keep feeling I am starting from scratch? I suspect that I take it in. Dhamma talks through the head, not the heart. Yeah, good question. Well, if a retreat is about accumulation of knowledge, yeah, you better keep your notebook and keep collecting information. But if it's about, why do you come, why do you come to this? Why are you doing this? Well, surely you're doing this because you want to be a better person inwardly. You want to understand yourself. You have personal questions. You have issues inside. And then you find teachings which answer those issues. So, say, for me, one of my major issues, as you know, was anxiety. So I didn't have to learn a lot of intellectual structures. I just needed some tools to deal with my anxiety. And that was vibhava tanha, basically. Once I understood vibhava tanha, I could deal with my anxiety. Sufficient. Not so much information. I didn't have to get into in all that. So I guess the answer is, what part of this teaching is actually helping you? That you should be remembering, no? because that should be more like in your bones rather than in your head, because it works. It works for you. I guess you could ask yourself, yeah, what do I hope to accomplish in meditation? Where am I going with this? What is it about my inner world that makes me unsatisfied that I would devote so much time to meditation? These are important questions for your own direction. But in terms of study, I would say take the Four Noble Truths, take a very simple version of the Four Noble Truths, take Luangpor Sumedho's or whoever you want. Don't make it too complex. And just get the basics down of the Four Noble Truths. Just get the basic Pali words, and then just write out one of the terms, samadhi, and just work with that for 3 months. What does that mean for you? Don't get too intellectual about it. Samavirya, you listen to a bit, Ajahn Sucitto, whoever you want to listen to, or Prayuto, don't get too complex, but look at it in your own mind for 3 months. 3 times 3. So you add them all up and you've got 3 years practice. Anyway, some kind of number like that. And that's contemplative reading as opposed to cumulative reading. So if I were to be writing a PhD on Buddhism in the time of Asoka or something like that, I'm a scholar, yeah. Then I need information, I need to collect data, then I need to make some comparisons. That's the work of the scholar, that's the work of intellect. But we're contemplatives. We're not scholars. You can be, I mean, you can do both. But what we're doing is we're just trying to take this teaching really deeply internally into our own mind. And well, when the Buddha says the right effort, what does he mean by that? And what does that mean in the context of my own heart? Then the Four Noble Truths, you won't forget them. They'll be deeply embedded in your mind and they'll come up all the time. So it's not just like information that you're getting. I hope that's helpful. And then a couple of questions online. Luangpor is using the word puru. This is from Manuel Guerrero. Sounds Spanish. Luangpor is using the word puru. In Pali language, puru means man. It doesn't really or people. In Sanskrit language, it means much or many. I wonder what it means in Italian, but it's a Thai word. For those of you who are listening online, puru means awareness. It's good enough, yeah. Pu, I think, is person. Ru is knowing, so it's the knowing part of consciousness. Yeah. So, because for those folk online, this is in the context of Thai folk, and we throw in some of these words. So anyway, that's an easy question. And here's not an easy question. So this is Namaskar Luangpor, how to shift awareness to the knowing with skillfulness and without falling into the clinging to knowing. For example, when silently chanting Bhutto as a mindfulness anchor object in daily moments, there is direct awareness of the chanting experience that is prior to mental labeling chant or thoughts. Is this pure awareness or knowing? Whichever term that points to, or is that still mind consciousness? In some moments, I can see that the content being known and knowing is inseparable. The chant or not chant is the same in terms of all reflects the same knowing. Such knowing also feels impermanent, but there is something that knows regardless of which sense or experience is. Stop thinking. That's just too much thinking. Chaimai? I mean, we can all see that. Chaimai means, do you get it? And that's a person fascinated with their own thoughts. And to be kind to this person, it's a sincere question, but it is a kind of fascination with thought. And that is like quite often people who have highly refined ways of analysis get caught up in their own they're fascinating with their own questions, and then they just keep looking at different aspects of it. That's why, like early on in this, early on in this retreat, this is early on, and right at the beginning of this retreat, I said, go to silence. Really, go to silence. So for this person, if your mind starts to create those complex kind of analyses, don't go there. Just go to silence. But remember, I'm not saying repress thought. I'm saying disengage with thought. One of the things you'll find that if you start to notice the background, you start to actually relax the mind. What happens? Your heart opens. Your heart cannot open if it's always coagulated. Is that a word? With thinking, right? Because it's up here. So for something like that question, and all of us, when you find your mind is very dense with thinking, then if you're noticing the body, there's a lot of tension, pressure around the eyes, around the forehead. There's a lot of tension there. So awaken to that, just in that, like in the body awareness thing, awaken to that. And then bring your attention down to your heart. Feel the contraction of your throat. And you learn to abide here. Keep bringing it down, keep bringing it down. See what happens.